So unfortunately, what we've seen so far, as I said in my opening testimony, is that we've seen both pertussis and measles come back. Measles is the most contagious, so it's surprising that it's the first one of the first ones to come back. Pertussis, partially because the vaccine does tend to wane in immunity quicker. You don't get lifetime immunity with pertussis, so it tends to be in the population. In order to protect infants who are the ones most at risk, we need to get everyone in the population. So those two studies have been done, recent studies have been done showing that the outbreaks that happened here in California in 2010, in fact, we passed a law here in California because of that pertussis outbreak to mandate pertussis vaccination when you enter into 7th grade or at 12 years of age, because we had 10 children die and over 9,000 people get infected, and you had hundreds of hospitalizations from that pertussis outbreak. So pertussis clearly triggered legislative action. Measles, of course, we have the Disneyland outbreak, but don't forget that in the year before, in 2013, before the Disneyland outbreak, we had a record 644 cases of measles in the country. So it's not just Disneyland, it's also, we're seeing this growing outbreaks, and this is what we don't want to see happen. Certainly, I hope we never see polio or diphtheria return. That would be, but we're already seeing, basically, canary in the coal mine is already showing that we have a problem right now. Both the Disneyland outbreak and the pertussis outbreak that happened in 2010, and actually last year, 2014, there was another resurgence of pertussis as well.
Is there a reason then that we're not just simply focusing on measles and pertussis as a basis for the mandate and allowing the opt-out for the other vaccinations?
Well, I think that I think the issue is that, well, we could certainly just focus on those two vaccines. The problem is that if we do we wait for the other ones to return in order to now make a decision, right? And so there's a reason we've decided to require those particular vaccinations. Every one of those vaccinations has been discussed and debated by the legislature and has been recommended for school entry. And that's why they're on that list.
So now, with respect to the provision that allows the Department of Public Health, if that's the department's name, to add vaccines to what will now be a mandated list as opposed to a list of vaccines from which people could opt out, is there a reason why we are allowing that to continue to remain in the statute? Because frankly, if I'm being asked to mandate that people get a vaccine, I'm somewhat reluctant to turn over to a California departmental agency the opportunity to add mandated vaccines to a list without at least coming to talk to me or whoever's on this committee about the rationale for it, the risk associated with it, the reason for the mandate, and all of the other issues that we can think about sitting here.
Well, I think certainly that could be something we can take a look at, because as I said, it has never been done by the department without legislative action in the past. Now, if you want to sort of solidify that in statute, obviously this is not the immediate time to do it, but I'd love to have a conversation with you about that, whether if that's something that would make this issue, make this bill more workable for you. We can certainly have that conversation as well.
And one thing I'm not certain,
yeah.
one issue I'm not certain about, I just want to ask, because I'm sure you all are, is does the Department of Public Health today not have the authority to step in appropriate cases if we have communities where the immunization rate is extraordinarily low, to step in and require vaccinations at public high school districts?
There's only been, so first of all, they don't have the authority to go in advance. They can, when an outbreak occurs, they can force people to be quarantined, they can force people to leave the school. There's only been one situation in the United States where they've actually forced vaccination. That was actually during an outbreak in Philadelphia, where there were over 900 people who got measles, and actually 9 children died. I mean, it's not a step that we want to take. As I said earlier, this bill is not about mandatory vaccination. We don't want to get to the place where we're going to be mandatorily vaccinating children against their parents' will. This is about ensuring that we keep our vaccination rates high, that we're protecting our public spaces, particularly our schools. The reason California and every other state in the country passed vaccination requirements was to protect the public and to protect children at school. And that's really what we're trying to restore. Because the personal belief exemption has basically the use of that has increased to the point where we no longer have that protection. That's what we've seen with the pertussis outbreak. That's what we've seen with the measles outbreak. We need to restore that balance so that people, we've had witnesses here who talked about how they are afraid of now bringing their infant into public places to pick up their older sibling in school or go to other public places because now measles is around. They're seeing notices when they go to Trader Joe's or to get a notice that Bart, there was a person with exposure, or if you go to a restaurant, suddenly you get a notice from the Department of Public Health, oh, you might have been exposed, you or your infant might be exposed to measles. Or actually pertussis. In fact, actually, I was going to bring it up later, this is a notice that was sent out today by the Sacramento City Unified School District notifying parents of a school that their child might have been exposed to whooping cough. It's happening now.
Well, thank you for your responses. And
No, please, no public sergeants.
thank you for your responses, Dr. Pan, and for your professionalism during this process. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Thank
I
you, Senator
believe Senator Mitchell, I saw her, she wants a comment or question.
I have a question of the opposition at the table. A number.
This is not the place to do this. Excuse me, move her from the building, please.
Ma'am, this is not the place to do this. Ma'am, this is not the place to do this. Please exit the room. Please exit the room, ma'am. Ma'am.
Discredits the whole crowd.
Okay.
Before I ask my
Sorry.
question, I have to say that while I agree with my colleagues who acknowledge civic engagement and people's willingness to come and participate in this discussion, I have to say that as chair of the Budget Subcommittee on Health and Human Services, I would hope that as we discuss other critical issues that have budget impact, that impact families and their children in California, that people would be equally as focused and concerned on the broad array of issues that we have the jurisdiction to make decisions on that impact all children and their families. Furthermore, I have to say, as an elected member of the state Senate who represents just under 1 million people, I resent the nature of the calls that have come into my office that have posed personal threats to my person. We can all engage civically, civilly. I do that every day when I took an oath to be a member of the state Senate. So the kinds of calls I've gotten, not one of which was from a member of the communities I represent, I deeply resent. And let me say that I have the capacity as a member of the state Senate to look broadly, take in all critical information, and make an unbiased, emotion-free decision on what I think is best for the just under 1 million people who elect me every 4 years. With that, let me ask the opposition. A number of the members of the public who testify, who brought up their children and talked about that they, or children or grandchildren, talked about that their children were either damaged or sensitive to vaccines. Show me in the bill, I certainly hope you have a copy, the language that would prevent those families or their doctors from them being vaccinated if a medical professional deemed them vulnerable. Could you show me the language in the bill that doesn't protect a parent or a child from being vaccinated? I'll give you my copy of the bill if you don't have one. You could show me the language in the bill. One of the members of the opposition.
Take your time. They can come back.
We've been here a while. Take your time and look at it.
I mean, a number of people have asserted. So the danger, I feel as a policymaker, is when assertions are made in public comment that aren't fact-based. That's irresponsible. So please show me the language in the bill that would prevent those parents from protecting their children who a medical professional says are vulnerable and should not be vaccinated. I will wait. You can go on to other members, sir, Mr. Chair, if you'd like. I'll wait for the answer.
We
Thank
will
you.
let the opposition, if they have a response, if you don't have a response, just say, we have no response at this time. We will move on. I think Senator Nguyen, I believe, question, comment?
I have a question.
Sure.
Sure.
Senator, I know that you have a section here to be amended.
Yes.
on section C, would that address the homeschooling problem?
Yes, I just want to be sure we're clear that I am taking the committee amendments, so I just want to make that very clear, and that would clarify the issue that if you homeschool your child, you would not have to have the required
Well,
vaccinations.
let's clarify, these are authors' amendments?
Sorry.
Wait, these are not committee
I'm
amendments?
sorry, authors'
Authors,
amendments.
Author
sorry,
amendments.
Mr. Yes, sorry,
Yes.
Chair.
Okay, I just want to make sure, because, I
Yes.
mean, that was a very critical component that was very important to me, to making sure that those parents who choose to homeschool their children has a choice.
And I agree with you, because again, this is not a mandatory vaccination bill. This is about protecting the public, and we do want to be sure there are options for parents to be able to educate their children if they choose not to vaccinate.
Then my next question is, in the current proposal, is there any protection for religious reasons?
So in the current proposal, basically, if you don't have a medical exemption, then you would have to homeschool your child. There's no other exemption. We've eliminated the personal belief exemption. There's no religious exemption currently in the state statute.
Okay, thank you.
I would also point out that there's been no religious organization that has formally expressed that they had objection to vaccination in relation to this bill, and it's communicated to our office.
I believe Senator Manning wanted to readdress or question or make comment.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. So keying off a question, I would just add that part of the public health strategy with vaccination, the public health protection is based on a high percentage of the population being vaccinated. So when people opt out and you drop below a certain level of vaccination, it's my understanding you create a greater susceptibility, not just to the unvaccinated, but even people who have been vaccinated who may have a weak resistance even after that vaccination. So designing policy or legislation that was only reactive once there's evidence of an outbreak, you're defeating the public health objective. So that's why, informed by the CDC, by academies, by pediatric academies, the list of vaccinations that is recommended and would be evidence of which would be required under this bill, it's based on achieving the broadest public health protection possible. According to the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control, the chance of a serious allergic reaction due to DTaP, MMR, or varicella vaccines is less than 4 in 1 million doses. But 1 child will die out of every 10 who gets tetanus. Of 1,000 without measles vaccine, 1 will die. And in 100,000 of older children who contract chickenpox, 1 will die. So if you look at statistics and you're making a decision for the benefit of public health, you choose between 4 in a million with an adverse reaction versus fatalities among those who remain unvaccinated. That said, the concerns of the majority of those here today, who are guided first and foremost by concern for the health of their children and their families, they are driven by what they think is best for their children. But where we have a balance here with this bill that is a tough one for us is, on the one hand, many people voiced their strong belief that they have a right to make the decision for their child. If it were just a decision about their child, I think you would find no quarrel with having a right to make that decision. My concern and my trouble with that opposition is that you're making a choice not just for your child, not just for your family, but a choice that potentially affects another person's child. A decision that potentially can set in motion the mother who we heard from today whose child contracted measles on a trip to Disneyland, And so when our vaccination rates go down, we create greater susceptibility, not just to those that haven't been vaccinated, but to even those who have been vaccinated or who can't be vaccinated because they suffer from an autoimmune disease. So this puts in conflict a personal decision affecting your family or your personal belief and what we're elected to do, which is to protect the public health and safety of the people of the state of California. And it's for that reason that I'll be supporting this bill today. And that does not denigrate the concern voiced by families, but to make sure you understand, as Senator Mitchell pointed out, make sure, just as you've sought to research what's best for your child from the point of view of vaccinations or vitamin supplements or whatever the preferred protections are for your child, make sure you know what this bill says, because this bill still protects those of you who share a concern that your child may have an autoimmune deficiency or some other susceptibility where you will be eligible for that child to exercise the right under that exemption. I know this bill has a way to go. I know that the chair will be voicing his views, and I'm curious to hear those as well. But I just want to thank those who have engaged today in a respectful and informed and principled discourse. And I am working very hard not to let those who have also, I think, crossed the line of civility with my office and today in the hearing room, that I do not attribute that to all the others who were here in a respectful manner. And with that, I thank you, Mr. Chair.